This is where we stopped in the last video. We discussed what is matter and what are the phases of matter or states of matter. We found out that it's solid, liquid, and gas, and we checked if they actually matter by checking if they meet up to the definition of matter. Now, do you know what's the difference between solid, liquid, and gas? What makes solid like a fixed shape? What makes liquid liquidy? What makes gas a gas? Let's figure that out in this class. Take a look at this image. This is an image of the structure of particles inside solid, liquid, and gas. Yes, solid, liquid, gas. All phases of matter are made of particles which are present inside them. And the arrangement of particles and the amount of freedom these particles have to move decide if a specific object is in a solid state, liquid state, or gaseous state. Now, let's start with solid. Why don't we take a look at this GIF? We can see that this is the structure of particles in a solid. These particles are all oscillating or vibrating. You need to understand there is a difference between vibration and movement. These particles, you can't say that they're moving. Vibration does not come under movement. Vibration meaning they're just moving back and forth about their mean position. They're not moving out of their position, which is the reason solids retain their structure. The structure of solids do not collapse. You have a table, it just doesn't, its shape doesn't suddenly just doesn't change, right? You have a laptop, its shape doesn't change suddenly. That's because the particles your laptop and your table are made of do not move. Now, with this understanding, let's try to note down some properties of solid. Now, these are through two properties that we can come up with after looking at the GIF. Let us just relate this to our understanding and make sure that our understanding is clear. Our first property here is known as rigidity. Rigidity is a tendency of an object to resist a change in its shape, which you know is true. As we said that in solids, the structure stays intact. That means the shape doesn't change. The object has a high tendency to retain its shape. So solids are rigid. Now let's look at shape. We, it's related to rigidity. We know that the shape of solids do not change. If solids have rigidity, tendency to keep their shape, that means solids have a fixed shape because their shape doesn't change unless external forces applied on it. Now, there's another property that is usually used to describe solids, and that is volume. Do you know what volume is? Volume is the amount of space an object occupies. So, just take your phone, place it on your table, place it on your bed, or place it on a chair. It's going to occupy the same amount of space everywhere, right? Is it proportional? No. Does it? Is it a certain? Is it some size in the table, and you place it on the chair? Does the size of the phone change? No. The amount of space the phone occupies remains the same in all cases. That means its volume remains the same. It has fixed volume. Now, let's take a look at the properties of liquid. And for that, let's take a look at another GIF. Over here, we can see that the particles are not forming any structure, right? They're just freely moving around the solution. There isn't any arrangement. But we can also see that the liquid is taking the shape of the container. Do a thing. Go grab a bowl, add in some water into it. The water would have a certain shape, right? Now, transfer that water to a glass. Now, the water takes a different shape. So, the, sh- the shape of liquid doesn't remain the same. Liquids take the shape of a container. Whatever the liquid is in, it takes that shape. Now, let's do the same thing we did for solid for liquid. Let's check if it is rigid. Let's check if liquids have a shape, fixed shape. Let's check if liquids have fixed volume. Now, do you think liquids are rigid? Again, I repeat, rigidity is a tendency of an object to resist a change in its shape. Do shapes of liquid change? Yes, they do. We just discussed it. When you put water in a bowl, the shape of liquid is different. When you put water in the glass, the shape changes. So it doesn't have it is not rigid. Now let's take a look at shape. Does it have a fixed shape? If liquids don't have a tendency to retain their shape, this basically means that they do not have a fixed shape. Now, volume. Do liquids have fixed volume? Do one thing. Again, take a bowl and measure 50 ml of water into it and pour it into the bowl. Now, pour that 50 ml of water into a beaker. When you pour the water into the beaker, you will see that it would still measure 50 ml. Even though you're changing the container with different shapes, the volume doesn't change. It has fixed volume, even though the shape changes. If 50 ml of water, wherever it is, it will remain 50 ml of water. 50 ml of water won't become 70 or 80 ml of water. That means it has fixed volume. Now, let's take a look at gases. For gases, let's look at a GIF first. What do you notice here? The particles are moving all around the place. And like liquids, in the GIF for liquid, we could see that there is a line which shows until where the liquid is. We all can imagine gases to some extent. Do gases have a specific quantity? Can you pour gases into a liquid and they take specific amount of space? No. They just cover the entire space, right? That's how it is. The particles in gases are also free to move around. They can move all around the place. They do not create a specific structure. They are free to move around. From this, let's try to note down the properties of gas. Is it rigid? It is not. It doesn't have a tendency to retain its shape. Gases, the shape of gases change. Imagine you're blowing into a balloon like the previous video. The gases, we are blowing a gas into the balloon, right? It just fills in the balloon, the shape of the balloon. There are balloons of different shapes. It just fills in the shape. Gases don't have its own shape. That means that it is not rigid. It doesn't have a tendency to keep its shape. Now, does it have fixed shape? If it's not rigid, it won't have a fixed shape. Now, let's take a look at the volume. Volume is a little bit tricky part. Let's take a look at another GIF. What is happening here? All the particles are clustered together and then they start moving far away from each other. And at one point, you don't see them. They go so far away from each other, they're just, seems like they're not even related. What does this tell you? Do they have fixed volume? First, they occupied very less amount of space, and then they start going all around the place. All of these particles are first one. Even if they are spread apart, they're also one thing. They're going all around the place, which means they're expanding. Expanding meaning they will occupy more space now. That means they don't have a fixed volume. Their volume changes. And that is all for this video. In this video, we looked at the properties of solid, liquid, and gas to differentiate them from each other. And we looked at how the structure of particles is in solid, liquid, and gas. Thank you so much for watching. Like the video and subscribe to our channel.